The night was quiet, the kind of stillness that made everything feel like it was frozen in time. Jason Statham, casually dressed after a long day, walked up to a gas station, his mind weighed down with thoughts. He had no idea that tonight, this particular night, would change everything. As Jason approached the entrance, a flicker of movement caught his eye. There, standing alone behind the counter, was a pregnant woman. She looked worn, tired, and her eyes carried a weight that spoke volumes. She was working the late shift, the night almost over, yet it felt like she was in the middle of a long battle. It wasn't just the figure of the woman that struck Jason, it was her face. The one he had once known so well, the face of someone who had been a part of his past. Karoline. His childhood friend. The memories of their time together, so many years ago, flooded back in an instant. They had laughed together, shared secrets, and were inseparable in their younger days. But now, here she was, standing in front of him, and it was as if time itself had changed her. Jason hesitated for a moment, as if trying to process the sight of her. His heart raced, not because of fear, but because of a deep, unsettling familiarity he couldn't shake. He had not seen Karoline in years, not since they had both gone their separate ways, and he hadn't expected to see her like this. He blinked, unsure whether his eyes were deceiving him. But there she was, just a few feet away from him, so much different from the person he had known. Karoline? Jason's voice was low, almost a whisper, as he stepped closer. The moment she heard her name, Karoline slowly lifted her head, her tired eyes widening. Jason? Her voice trembled, a mix of disbelief and confusion. Is it really you? Jason's chest tightened as he stepped closer, still not fully believing the woman standing before him was the same person he had known all those years ago. I can't believe it's you, he murmured, taking in her appearance. The years had been hard on her. She was no longer the vibrant, strong woman he remembered, but instead someone who seemed beaten down by life itself. Karoline wiped away a tear that threatened to fall and took a deep breath. Yeah, it's me, but things aren't like they used to be. They never are, right? Jason didn't know how to respond. His heart was heavy with guilt, the kind of guilt you feel when you've lost touch with someone you once cared about, and now you see them in pain. What happened to you, Karoline? Where have you been all these years, he asked, his voice full of concern. A bitter laugh escaped her lips as she looked down at her hands. Where have I been? I've been trying to survive, Jason. After everything, after the accident, after losing my family, after he left me, I've just been here, trying to make it day by day. Jason's heart sank as she spoke. He had heard about the accident, the one that had taken so many lives in an instant. But hearing it from her, hearing the pain in her voice, was different. He had no idea what she had been through, how deeply it had affected her. He felt an overwhelming wave of guilt wash over him, knowing he had been so focused on his own life that he hadn't checked in on her. I had no idea, Karoline. I'm so sorry. I should have known. I should have been there for you. She shook her head, tears filling her eyes. You couldn't have known. You were living your life. I get it. But it doesn't make this any easier. It doesn't bring them back. I'm all alone now, Jason. All alone except for this little one. She gently rested her hand on her swollen belly, the soft movements of her child making it all the more real. Jason stood frozen, trying to process the flood of emotions that was rushing through him. He had known Karoline as someone who could handle anything, someone who was strong and independent. But now, he saw her for what she had become, someone who was struggling, broken in ways he never expected. I never knew, Jason whispered. I never knew things had gotten this bad. Her voice cracked as she spoke again, the weight of the years weighing heavily on her. What was I supposed to do, Jason? I lost everything. My family. My husband. And now, I'm just trying to survive. I'm trying to give this baby a future, but it feels like every day is harder than the last. Sometimes I don't know how much more I can take. Jason felt the ache in his chest, the overwhelming sadness for the woman he once knew so well. He had been so wrapped up in his own life, so far away from hers, that he hadn't even known how much she was suffering. He reached out, his hand gently touching her shoulder, a gesture of comfort that felt so small compared to the pain she had endured. "You're not alone, Karoline," he said softly. "You don't have to do this by yourself. I'm here. Whatever you need, I'm here." For a moment, Karoline was silent. She didn't speak, but the way she looked at him told him everything. The tears in her eyes said it all. She had been waiting for someone to say those words. She had been waiting for a hand to reach out and pull her back from the edge. And now, here it was. Jason looked at her, determination flooding his voice. "I don't care what's happened in the past. We can't change that. But we can change what happens from here. I'll help you, Karoline. You're not alone anymore." She looked at him, and for the first time in what seemed like forever, a small, genuine smile broke through her sadness. "Thank you, Jason. I don't know what to say, but thank you." Jason smiled back, relieved to see a glimpse of the woman he remembered. The world had broken her, but she was still here. And maybe, just maybe, they could fix what had been broken together. As they stood there in the quiet of the night, Jason realized just how much he had taken for granted. He had spent years chasing his dreams, building a life for himself, while Karoline had been left behind, struggling in silence. But now, fate had brought them back together. And he wasn't going to let her face the future alone. Before they parted, Jason couldn't help but ask, "Karoline, do you ever think about what could have been? If life hadn't changed so much?" Her smile was faint, but it was there. "I think about it sometimes. But you know, Jason, life isn't about what could have been. It's about what we do with what we have now." Jason nodded, his heart swelling with a mix of emotions. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, he felt hopeful. Maybe, together, they could face whatever came next. Subscribe.